Hello there and welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life, where we're all about turning positive into a plus. My guests today are talking about an organization called Next Step, who definitely are turning positive into a plus. Hey Kepler. Hey Brenda, how you doing?
Hi, Carl.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Carl.
Thank you both so much for being here. Okay, I've got the quote on the Next Step website says, Next Step empowers young people living with HIV to create their brightest future. So Kepler, what is Next Step?
Next Up is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we serve young adults living with chronic illness, whether that be HIV, but also sickle cell cancer and a variety of rare genetic diseases. Our whole thing is about bringing young people together for community, music, and mentorship, and creating a space for them to meet other young people living with their chronic illness, but also similar chronic illnesses, so they can access a peer network, access resources and strategies for navigating their health advocacy and also just adulting in general um, from their peers, and get the skills they need to live their brightest futures.
Now, Brenda, it's nice to see you again. Welcome back to Plus Life. How has Next Step had a positive impact in your life? How did you come to be with this organization?
So I was introduced to Next Step when I was, I think, 19, just turned 19. And I was in a really bad place mentally. I had grown up going to camp for kids with HIV, but I had been removed from it for a while. And so I was in a place where I just felt really isolated and lost as far as going into young adulthood living with HIV. And so I was introduced to Next Step, and I found a community that I had never experienced before, even with my history of being involved in the community before. So I ended up going, I think I went for 8 or 9 years until I aged out, something like that.
About that,
Um,
yeah, about that.
and yeah, and just the experience that I got out of it, it ended up helping me gain enough confidence and self-esteem living just in myself, but also living with HIV to go public and to talk about it and really feel confident in what I had to say, in my experience, pretty much.
Tell us about some of the programs specifically that you got involved in that helped, as you just described.
There's a variety. Some of the ones that really stick out to me, that a lot of people talk about, they have a music therapy program, and it's not something where you go in and there's a whole thing set up and whatever. It's kind of just whatever your comfort level is. But once you start and you see everybody else kind of getting into the groove of what they're doing, it's just really you let loose. And it's a huge bonding experience. So that was always cool for me because it's just the whole group comes together and there's no agenda to it, basically. I hate using that, but there truly isn't. And it just brings everybody together. It makes you feel better about yourself, learning a new instrument or just picking up something that you haven't done in a while. But there's a lot of different workshops and stuff throughout the whole time, like sex ed workshops, just kind of like Kepler said, adulting things, learning how to budget. So it's very all encompassing and you get a lot out of each thing. As somebody who grew up with HIV and went through sex ed and stuff, I had never had such comprehensive sex ed before their workshops, and the people that they brought in to just be no cards are off the table. What do you want to know?
Yeah, which is really important. And to building on that, I mean, sex ed is part of it, but why are organizations like Next Step so important, Kepler, for young people, especially young people living with HIV who might feel a little disconnected from the world?
I think that's such a really good question. And I think for all the reasons Brenda just said, I think having a chronic illness can be extremely isolating. And even when you have communities and friends and peers around you, it's not always 100% guaranteed that that community, those friends, those peers or even sometimes even your family are going to understand exactly what it is that you're going through. They can empathize and they can listen, but only a group of young people who are actively walking the walk that you are can really get that. I get the opportunity of talking to a lot of young people like Brenda who are just finding out about Next Step and finding out about programs. And one of the things I say to them all the time is let me introduce you to a few of my closest friends, because a lot of them, either they've been to camp and it's been a really long time since they've been there, or they've never been to a program where they've met a young person living with their chronic illness. In particular for HIV, man, I think we don't talk about it enough. And one of the cooler moments for me at every program that we run for the HIV community is when we say, "Hey, this program is for people living with HIV," and it's important because I've watched that moment move people. Because even just saying the words out loud, and in a space to hear it with other people who are also positive, I've watched that move folks, and we don't get to talk about it in those ways and in that safety in everyday life, sadly. There's a lot of stigma. I don't gotta tell y'all that. There's a lot of stigma around HIV, and I think our conferences, we know we can't get rid of it. I don't think that's real, but we try to engage people in making sure we have a space for just for them, right? That's the important part.
And Brenda, I want to go back to when you first got involved with Next Step, because as anyone growing up, it can always feel awkward going into a new space, right? And kind of stepping out of your comfort zone. It's even more so when you've got a chronic condition like HIV or something else that is so heavily stigmatized. So sort of talk me through that first day, I guess, that you got involved. Because, if there are people watching this who are like, oh, cool, but I don't know, I can't see my, they're maybe a little nervous or apprehensive or shy about getting into a situation like this, especially if really no one knows about their HIV status. Give us a bit of a rundown on what it was like when you first got into the community.
It's nerve-wracking. It's really hard to describe because I was fortunate in the way that I actually already knew Kepler, and knew other people in the community. So I was still terrified because I was like, I don't know, I haven't been involved in the community in a long time. I don't know what the time is going to be like. I just don't know. So it was still nerve-wracking, but I had some kind of a safety net, and not everything is going to be unfamiliar. But we like to say in our community that HIV brings us together, but it doesn't keep us together. We stay for so many other reasons, and that's really because of the bonds that we create beyond HIV. We go there because that's the common thing that we're all there for. But it's probably, and we definitely talk about it, and there are definitely specific workshops and stuff centered around that. But for the most part, even all these years later when we get together, HIV is the last thing that we're talking about. You really do find true community and friends and family. So it's like anything else. You go in, you have no idea, but the community itself, always the staff, each year the staff is amazing. They truly do their job to find the most welcoming, humble, nurturing people. So it's just having faith that and it's hard to have faith, but just keeping that faith that you're not going to be let down, and those people are going to be there for you because they truly are. It is very, very welcoming. And even throughout the week, as things get hard, they have support staff. So there's never going to be a moment throughout your time that you're going to be alone. There's always going to be somebody there, and you catch on to that really, really quick.
Kepler, what's the change you see in people when they first arrive to when they leave or become part of this community? And what's that like for you?
Oh, man. So the thing that comes up for me the most, there's like 1,000 memories coming back. But it's really simple, the change, because of what it represents. And there are young people who have often come to the program, and one of the ways that when they talk about HIV, you'll hear things like "I'm HIV" or "I got it," or those kinds of things where you're saying it, or you're half saying it, or you're those kind of bits. And usually by the end of the program, what I hear people actually say at times is, "Oh, I'm HIV positive." And it's really subtle, it's really small, but it's actually really significant, because that for me is that moment when we know that the illness isn't driving who you are. I think Brenda just did a really good example of saying, no, we talk about other things. And it heartens my heart that when y'all still get together, that is actually the last thing you talk about. Like that is actually pretty important to me because it means it doesn't occupy this big psychic space in your lives in the same way that it often has. And I don't think the goal is to remove that because I don't get to decide that for people, but that you can find that community is pretty important.
I love that. And in the last couple of minutes we've got remaining, Kepler, if people want to be a part of this, but they're not there physically on the ground, how can they be? Can they be? How do people get more information?
Yes, that's a really good question. So the first way you can get more information is for visiting Next Step's website. It's www.nextstepnet.org, and look up conferences, particularly One Love, and that's how you will find out about that particular program. How can people be a part? Currently, we're still running programs virtually, so you can actually participate from anywhere. As long as you've got good internet connection and a laptop, you can participate. Also, we send you goodies. We do. But in person, and we're hoping next year to be able to run these programs in person, the thing I've always said to people is if you can make it to the Boston area, we can get you the rest of the way there. So you just got to land at an airport or a train station and let us know, and we will help close that gap. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Kepler, Brenda, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on all the great work you guys are doing at Next Step. It's an amazing, amazing program that is really transforming young people's lives, and Brenda is a shining example of that. That is going to do it for this episode of Plus Talk. If you want more information, check out our website, pluslifemedia.com. We'll put all of Next Step's information up on that. And remember, you can follow us across social media platforms. We are at Plus Life Media. Till next time, take care, stay safe, be nice to one another. Bye.